My challenge sounded pretty simple. Play one Yu-Gi-Oh card on my first turn of a duel. And for a game where winning involves splurging cards in your first turn, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this would be rather easy. The only problem is that the card I am trying to play is Zushin the Sleeping Giant. Making its debut in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, Zushin's obnoxious summoning requirements are even a plot point in the anime. Everyone owns this card, and yet only a team of duelists too poor to possess other Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards even contemplate trying to use it. And the good news for me is that they didn't make it any easier in the trading card game. Zushin can only be special summoned by tributing a level 1 normal monster with 10 Zushin tokens. And the only way you can give a monster Zushin tokens is to reveal a copy of the Sleeping Giant in your hand to give 1 token per turn. And whilst normally one could try and stall for 10 turns, that wouldn't cut the mustard in this challenge. To summarize the challenge, I needed to summon a copy of Zushin the Sleeping Giant on my first turn, build a deck which can replicate this feat, and I began doing this in November 2019 under Master Rule 4. My caveats were that my opponent was allergic to using hand traps, and also that I am bad at Yu-Gi-Oh! Indeed, the only tournament victory in my family belongs to my brother. He won a sneak peek tournament and then gave me the playmat as a continual reminder of this feat. It remains to this day my mouse mat. The Zushin deck that I genuinely own is based upon stalling, and most of the decks I researched online went that way too. Some that claimed they could summon the Sleeping Giant in 1 turn tended to need a few to set it up beforehand. Some of the speedier solutions revolved around using a copy of the Tyrant Neptune, which has been banned. Whilst I did enjoy the Pokemon crossover, using GB Hunter didn't seem like much fun. It was then that I came across a video by YouTuber Raziel Laz, who had conjured a very simple, controlled loop to summon Zushin in 1 turn. All you needed was to have a Light and Darkness Dragon, Gravekeeper's Shaman, Iris the Earth Mother, Cherubini, Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss pointing towards an Ancient Gear token on the field with the 5th spot empty. Skull Air needed to be activated in the back, Plague Spreader Zombie and 10 monsters needed to be in the grave, and Zushin the Sleeping Giant and Danger Tsushinoko needed to be in hand. Pretty simple, right? Now you're ready to begin the loop. First, use Tsushinoko to drop Light and Darkness Dragon's attack and defense. Then pay the cost of Plague Spreader Zombie by putting Zushin on top of your deck. Its effect trains Light and Darkness, but it doesn't have the strength to stop it. Next, chain Skull Air to banish a monster to try and destroy your own Ancient Gear token. Your token is protected by Cherubini, Plague Spreader stays in the grave because of GK Shaman, and lastly you draw 1 from the effect of Iris as a result of getting a Chain Link 3, which, surprise surprise, is Zushin the Sleeping Giant. Now you can give a token to the token and start again. The only resource required from the loop is to banish a monster. Do this 10 times and you have your Zushin. Problem solved. Except that A, it requires at least 1 turn to set up, due to using Isolde to search for Zushin. E, the deck uses Ib and Eclipse Wyvern to search for Land and World Legacy Landmark respectively, both of which are banned. And C, the deck is a complete mess. By my count it has no less than 22 archetypes, and 51 OVs across the main and extra deck, with the synergy between them threadbare. Naturally, I therefore decided that this would be the only way that I would be playing Zushin. I tried in vain to modify the deck to the ban list at the time, but I wasn't even close to making something functional. It was then that Master Rule 5 dropped, and a whole new path to Zushin opened. Recently, the brilliant deck builder May debuted a junk speeder deck which summoned Zushin in 1 turn. I wish my own attempts months earlier were anywhere near as functional. But then one day, whilst watching high-quality Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks in action, where else would I get inspiration for a Zushin deck? I watched a deck achieve the following: a board of totally random monsters, a graveyard filled with monsters, and with a trap card activated on the turn it was set. Never mind that somebody had already created a deck which the opponent couldn't possibly break. I knew that this was my moment. I set about making some minor modifications to accommodate the Sleeping Giant. I swapped the cards from the lock to the loop. I changed some ratios for consistency. I swapped some synchros for better deck thinking. I lost my girlfriend and my job, but the joke was on them. Now I could double down and complete the challenge. I then needed to find a way to use Lad. Golden Castle prevents me normal summoning, and he can't be special summoned, putting me in a bit of a pickle. The solution? Throwing it away and using Phantom of Chaos as a proxy. And I didn't even need to use a danger monster to lower its defense. I now need to admit that I first tried using Forbidden Dress to protect my level 1 normal monster. When Zushin failed to work, I deemed that there must have been a problem with my operating platform, and I was so inconsistent at playing the deck that it genuinely took me a few days to realize the error of my ways. I next tried to use Fusion Sword Murizami Blade, but it turns out that in nearly 20 years of Yu-Gi-Oh! There has not been a single level 1 normal warrior monster printed. After a moderate time researching, I stumbled across Pianissimo and opted to combo it with a Skull Servant. I added some draw and revive cards, and with that, the deck was done. And on the 5th of March, after hours and hours of misplays, I summoned Zushin the Sleeping Giant on my first turn. And you know what I say? Master Rule 5 isn't even active until April the 1st, 2020. So if I upload this in time, I can claim to be the first turn summon of Zushin by technicality. Let me run you through the basis of the deck. Ideally, you go first and draw into either Golden Castle or Near Space Connector. With searches, there are 11 ways to do this in a deck of 54, so roughly a 70% chance of achieving it. There are a fair few draw cards, but ideally you want to save those for later. From here, you have a fairly straightforward path to Saryua's Skull Dread. Don't search for Zushin Office all day, but do summon Armageddon Knight, and if it's in hand, go for Grepher, and make sure you leave your DDR in the deck for Power Tool Dragon. Complete the combo with Divine Sword to get yourself the 4 monsters for Saryuya. Saryuya has 3 purposes. 1, to send the key parts of your next combo back into the deck. 2 is to get Rescue Ferret, and 3 is to allow for the Synchro Summoning. Get your Rescue Ferret on the field by any means, and specifically grab Despot 01, Plague Spreader Zombie, and Beast of the Pharaoh. And now you're in a position to grab nearly your whole extra deck. My advice here is to temper your plays by using only 1 Hyper Librarian initially. The chances are that your deck is going to be in about the mid-30s, and the whole deck is reliant on you not drawing the other copy of Despot 01. And believe me, I know what that's like. Instead, wait until you blow up Despot Jet before playing the second Librarian. And from here, the game state is simple. Draw your entire deck by any means. Synchro Shenanigans, Golden Bamboo Sword, you name it, we've got it. Your main challenge soon is going to be navigating a 20-card hand using Yugioh Pro, but there's hopefully all of the resources in it in order for you to establish the desired board. This would be Zushin in hand, Phantom of Chaos, GK Shaman, Iris, and the Pianissimo Skull Servant with your Skull Lair active on the field. Plague Spreader Zombie and Lad needed to be in your graveyard, with the Lad obviously removed by Phantom of Chaos. Once this has been achieved, you're ready to loop, and BAM! Zushin the Sleeping Giant on the first turn. Of course, the win condition of your deck is actually still a bit flaky. Without monsters to attack over, Zushin is kind of a dead weight, and the combo can cost quite a bit of life points and leaves you with a 0 attack monster in attack mode. My recommendation is to use Skull Lair to blow up your own Phantom of Chaos, and use Jackpot 7 to stall your deck out for the victory. I mean, your opponents are all of your cards, it's only fair that you give them the same courtesy. So there we have it, a Zushin Turn 1 deck fit for beeping people with decks from 2013. Hopefully, I'll get some good mileage out of it over the coming months of quarantine. I guess I'll have to use it whilst I can.